We think about time in different ways. Time is a very strange thing. And today I'm going to start by telling you a story, and at some point of time I'm going to ask you a question. And the story, once upon a time, a very long time ago, there was, etc., right? You know that. Now here is this entire piece. Suppose I sort of said that here is this person who's the hero of the story. You meet this person and he says, I worked here for a very long time. Tell your neighbor, how long do you think this person has worked? Just tell your neighbor that number. How long the person would have worked. Just tell your neighbor. Okay. And now let's see what the responses are. How many of you thought that he has worked for more than 10 years? Raise your hand. Okay, wow. Oh, that's almost everyone. Okay. How many of you thought between 5 and 10? Okay. Maybe, 5%. How many of you thought he's worked under 5 years? Okay. That's interesting. You've got about 10 hands out there. Now, look at this very interesting process. Here are these people who now come back and tell you, this is the next set of characters in the story, and they say, oh, I worked here for a very long time. How long do you think they have worked for? Now you're getting smarter, clearly. So 3 years, 2 years. And this is an interesting point. Why did you change your response based on the person who you saw? What makes us do that? And that's really what I'm going to talk to you about, that there is actually something in our system that triggers our response towards time based on who we are talking about, right? So I want to tell you the real story that I was once traveling out from Pune and I was flying into Bangalore, which is where I live. There was this young man who was leaving home, probably for the first time, and he was feeling really sad. His parents were feeling sadder, and they were hugging him and they were crying. And there was the usual sort of a farewell that you see when young people leave home. And then, as luck would have it, this guy came and sat next to me. And I always make it a point to talk to whoever's sitting next to me. So then I started to ask this guy this question and said, so leaving home, are you sad? So he says, oh, no, I'm going for a job change. I said, wow, a job change? You mean you worked somewhere before? He said, yeah, I worked there for a very long time. So I looked at him and said, oh man, you look incredibly young to have worked for a very long time. And we all know what we are talking about. And so this guy turns back and says, yeah, you won't believe it. I worked there for almost 7 months. And that actually made me think of something pretty interesting. Groups of human beings actually work efficiently when we all have the same concept of time. Imagine how technology has changed our own perception. There was a time when you only could write letters, and if you wrote to somebody, you dropped something in the mail, it sort of reached that person, hopefully in about a week or so, and it came back. 2 weeks was a quick response. Today, when you text somebody, you expect an instant response. In fact, in the office, you'll have somebody who will say, I dropped you an email almost 10 minutes back. What's up? So our concept of time has really dropped a lot. And there is this time perception gap, which actually makes it very difficult to explain why people are dissatisfied. Now, think about it like this. Let's say the average in this room for a very long time, the very first question that we asked about, suppose that concept is 5 years. So you say the average is 5 years, so some people said 15, some said 10, etc. So 5 years, let's imagine that. And you have this other kid that we just spoke about. And just to make it easy, let's say that's 6 months, his definition of long time. So his 6 months is your 5 years. What it really means is that there is a huge difference, which means almost 10 times the difference. Now, when organizations design policies, what really happens is they create a policy and say, you'll have a job rotation, and some young kid goes up and says, when can I change my job? And the company tells him that, or her, that you can change your job in 18 months. Think about it. If somebody actually told you, you can change your job after 20 years, why are you getting so impatient? That's exactly what the kid feels like when you tell the person, but it's only 18 months. This but only 18 months is a very, very different field. So the physical concept of time and the inner world's concept of time is very different. And what it does is it makes us feel actually unhappy without our realizing, because we all know about communication gaps. We know about generation gaps. What we don't know about is time perception gaps. And that today is one of the biggest challenges why people are demotivated, they are leaving organizations faster than they think, and therefore, what can we do about it? Very straightforward. Think about time not from your own point of view, but from the point of view of the other person. What that could mean is more frequent feedback. So don't do a performance appraisal, once in a year. I mean, that could be your formal system, but give people feedback far more often. Today, think about feedback really like a Facebook like. So just telling somebody quickly that it was a great job, here is what you could have done better, here are 2 ideas on what you could have done. So change the feedback cycle, how often you connect to people. Change your feedback cycle in terms of how often you socialize with people, because it takes a very different model of time in order to keep relationships going. And above all, don't forget that technology is not the only way to connect. It's also the human touch that really makes it very, very different. Thank you very much.